My next guest is Joël McLean. He began his career in education in 1997. He's worked as a science and chemistry teacher at the intermediate and secondary level and has been a school principal since 2006. From 2014 to 2018, Joël was on detachment from his school board as a pedagogical leader at CFORP, serving the 12 French school boards of the province of Ontario in Canada, as well as various educational partners. As a leadership coach, he worked with school principals to help develop their leadership skills and the board level pedagogical teams regarding leading, teaching, and learning in the digital age. Joël is presently principal at the School Efficacy Leader and the School Efficacy Leader at the Conseil scolaire public du Nord-Est de l'Ontario. He is the founder of Inspired Leadership Coaching and hosts two podcasts, Inspired Leadership Podcast, and this is Leadership Podcast. Well, welcome to the podcast, Joël.
Thank you so much. Two things right off the bat. The first is 1997. Wow. That's already a long time ago, but you know what? It's fun because I'm actually retiring from the system at the end of this school year to effectively go into my business 100%. So that's exciting. And yeah, so my two podcasts, and another great thing, Dana, is that this is actually the first recording that I've done in my new studio here in our new home. And I just put up these two wall decals
cool.
last night. Yeah, I know. So
just
it's
in
actually
time.
first time, just in time. And so those are the two logos for my podcast. But you know what? It's great to be here. It's great to meet you. And it's great to be talking with you.
Yeah. And so, we both worked with Danny Bauer with Better Leaders, Better Schools.
Yep.
So I've heard of you in the past and I've been connected to you on LinkedIn. And when I heard that you were now going full time into Inspired Leadership Coaching, decided to reach out and have you on the podcast. So it's a pleasure to have more Franco-Canadians. I've had a few on as well. And, we've done some conversing in French prior to this, but we'll start off. Yeah, we'll start off with the story. I ask everybody, tell me about a time when you were in the trenches and managed to crawl out.
Yeah. So you know what? The one story that comes to mind was many, many years ago, and it just actually happened to be the first years as a school principal. I came from the classroom. I taught for about 10 years. And that was important for me to be able to, I had my plan. I wanted to become a person. I knew I wanted to take up a leadership role. I had that calling. I felt that calling. Like a lot of other people, I wanted to make have a bigger impact, have more influence. But at that time, I hadn't really put that into words yet, right? But I just had that feeling and that draw. So, I went from a chemistry teacher right into the principalship of a grade 7 and 8 school. We had about 200 students. And you know what? Those first 3 years, I had a blast. I had a great time with the kids and the staff, but it was challenging. It was very, very challenging, and I had a few staff members that were very challenging. And when you're first starting out and you're discovering your leadership and you're functioning according to what your beliefs are, what your values are, and your personality. When you run into roadblocks like that, when you're a leader and you run into some people that are resistant and people that just seem to not want to, work with the team and row in the same direction of the team, it could be hard on a leader. You can start questioning yourself, especially when you're at the beginning of your principalship. And, I started doing that. I started asking questions. I was like, should I be doing this job? Is it me? It seems like I'm putting my best foot forward. I'm collaborating. I'm sharing. But it always seemed to come back to some negativity because of a certain group of teachers that were there. And I was just trying everything that I knew at that time, being a new principal. And conversing with and talking with colleagues and mentors and it seemed like it wasn't coming together. So, and when we get to a point like that as leaders, we're not only sometimes perfectionists, but we want it to work. We want people to grow. We want, regardless of where our relationship is at that moment. It could be a very low. I like to think about John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership when I talk about those different levels of influence that we have with people. So even for the ones that are at level 1, we still want to try to get at least to that level 2 and up, right, in terms of the relationship. So when you're struggling with that and it seems like there's always a current that's coming up against you, it's hard on a person. It's very hard on a person, and it was hard on me. And, then I was close. I was this close to a burnout. I'm sure of it. I'm sure I was that close to a burnout. And so, I had to do something. I had, I had a choice to make. I had a decision to make. I could either, stay and continue trying to, trying to make things work, or, I can sit back and reflect and speak with my mentors and my coaches and just make the decision that, what, maybe, my time here and what I had to do is done. I've done everything that I can do, and maybe it's time for me to be able to move on to a different experience, right? A different school. So that's the decision that I did make. A lot of things were going very well in the school, but it was just that one little group, that little clique of teachers, right, that were making things, more difficult. So, the choice that I made was to ask to be change schools, and I did it mostly for me, right? Because at that point, I had to know if it was me or not, right? Because if it was me, then I can accept that, I can move on. I could either improve, I can have targets and improve myself, or I can make the decision that, maybe, or the realization that this, leadership position just wasn't for me. And, and that was the school that saved me, that new school that I went into, and I told myself, I said, I think it's going to be important for me when I walk into this school to do things the exact same way and to be the exact same person that I am, because I'm always myself. And that was important for me. So I said, you know what, the only way to find out is to come into the school and be yourself like you were at the other school, and collaborate in the same way, and develop your relationships the same way. And that's what I did. And it was night and day. It was just the most fantastic 4 years that I spent at that school as a school principal in a beautiful community, a school community. Was supporting staff. It doesn't mean that we didn't have our disagreements. It didn't mean that we didn't talk it out. But, for me, it gave me a chance just to get out of those trenches. I was in a low spot, and I needed others to help me get out of that, right? I needed to reach out. I needed to be vulnerable, and I needed to, ask for help. And that's what I got at that school. It ended up being my savior, and I'm pretty sure I avoided a burnout. If I didn't burn out even a little bit, because of the people that were there, because of the risk that I took, and the decision that I made to leave and to say, listen, I've maybe done everything that I can here. I've contributed everything that I could. Now it's time to maybe let somebody else come in and try to a different direction with the staff. And I'll go into a new school and add value there, to the best of the way that I can, and to be able to work with some fantastic people. So, it turned out great. And my career, after my career had taken off, but it just skyrocketed even more. Following that, I started discovering, the benefits of leadership development, and all that stuff. So, that's my story. And I like talking about it. I like telling people about it, because a lot of people go through the same things. And I think one of the mistakes that we do, Dana, is that, when things are going not as well, and we've tried everything, and we've tried to improve. And sometimes, it could be that you've had your time in the space where you are, and you've contributed what you can contribute. And sometimes maybe it's time to move on to something else, and to accept that, because experiencing something else will help you grow into a better version of yourself. And it takes that,
Yeah, no, I think having that growth mindset and knowing, like, it might just not be the right fit. I mean, that's for any job, right? But it takes,
Absolutely.
like, really somebody who is he knows himself and has emotional intelligence about their value, right? And to
Yeah.
see, like, okay, you're just going to be yourself and try the same things and with this other staff, right? And it worked out. So yeah, I think that's great to know, like, that is possible for those new principals who for the first position might not work out. I've talked to a few before who've, kind of been a couple places until they found the place that was
Absolutely.
the great one for them. And you also have been the pedagogical leader at the CFORP,
Yeah.
ORP, which is the French 12 French school boards in the province of Ontario. So talk a little bit about moving into that, and is that just a voluntary position? Is
Oh,
that a board you're on? Talk to me a little.
that was a life-changing experience for me when we talk
Uh-huh.
about life-changing experiences. So
Sure.
it was a detachment or secondment. So it was for the Ministry of Education here in Ontario, and it was a new project that they had put together. And CFORP is le Centre Franco-Ontarien des Ressources Pédagogiques. That's French for it. Basically, it was, you know, a company that would provide French language resources to the 12 French school boards in the province.
Okay.
And so they're funded by actually the 12 school boards of the province of Ontario. And they were putting into place a new project. And it was back when, you know, technology was first appearing in schools, you know, when we were doing that turn into technology, the 21st century, turning, as we called it in French. And technology was starting to show up in classrooms. And we were
Sure.
looking at, you know, how do we do that? How do we bring together technology and pedagogy? You know, how do we do that at the classroom level? How do we do it at the system level? And how do we do it at the school level with the school leadership? So the Ministry of Education wanted to put together a provincial team, right? Almost like a SWAT team. And this
Okay.
team was composed of different teachers from the 12 different boards that would be on detachment or secondment to that project. And they also went and got, you know, school principals so that we can also work the leadership level
Okay.
at the boards and the leadership level at the school in terms of technology integration into classroom.
Okay.
So, you know, following my first experience in my first school, I did the 4 years at the second school, and you know, by that time, I had started really developing, you know, a thirst for a leadership development, a thirst to grow, a thirst to be able to just expand, right? Because I was looking at different ways that I can have an influence on people and to be able to add value to them, right? So that they can in turn grow. So I remember this posting coming on my desk and I was like, wow, what's this? It looks really interesting. And it was the posting for that particular job, a pedagogical leader, they called it, but it was a principal position, right?
Okay.
So I looked at the description. I was like, okay, you know, I was pretty comfortable with technology, and we had a bunch of different projects in my current school that I was at, where we were integrating technology in the classroom. And so I said, you know what, that might be something really interesting and quite an interesting risk. You know, talk about going outside of your comfort zone
Yeah.
and growing. So, you know, I spoke with my beautiful wife Bridget. We had our, you know, our kids were young at that time, so the decision had to be both ours, right? For me
Sure.
to be able to go on detachment, because that would have meant that I had to, you know, had to travel a little bit all over the province, coaching school principals and schools and whatnot in that project. So we decided to go forward and take the risk. So, you know, I was part for 4 years. I was part of just a phenomenal team. You know, you can just imagine everybody on that team were motivated. They were all, you know, motivated to grow, to learn. They were always open to different ideas, suggestions, collaboration. So it was almost like the best of the best, you know, that they took from all the boards and put all those people in one team. So you can imagine the synergy and the
Yeah.
energy that you would pull from that, and the learning was just exponential, right? So we did that for 4 years and had quite a bit of an impact throughout the province. So I had the privilege and the opportunity to grow my own leadership in that work that I did, because I was able to travel all over the province in different school boards. And finally, I ended up working in all 12, meeting different school principals in different communities with different realities, and just seeing how, you know, they operated, how they, you know, how they made professional development and growth a priority, you know, what was their take, their vision. So, you know, just being exposed to that and bringing my ideas and bringing my vision and my coaching to the table, combined with that, made for just an unbelievable growth experience, right? And I'll never forget, Dana, I'll never forget the first weekend. Oh my goodness. I think that was the time in my life that I had almost one of the times in my life where I had probably the most anxiety. And I remember they had called us in for the first meeting. And back then it was always, you know, in-person meetings way before
Yeah.
COVID, right?
Yeah.
So we were all in Ottawa, and it was a Sunday night, and it was at the end of August. And I remember being in the hotel room, and I was away from my family, you know, and I'm type of father, or a very family oriented person. So everything that we do it together, right? Like my wife's my best friend. We do everything together, and we do stuff with our kids. So I was away from that, right? And already that was a little bit outside of my comfort zone. So I remember pacing and almost having like an anxiety attack, thinking to myself, my God, what am I doing here? I'm in a hotel room in Ottawa. My family is in North Bay, where we're in Canada now, which is just right beside North Bay, which is about 3.5 hours north of Toronto. And I was telling myself, this is a mistake. What am I doing here? I should be in my school. I should be getting, things ready. That's where I should be. And I just had that moment, right? And that's when I'm able to reach out, to my wife Bridget, and just have a good chat with her. And she brings my 2 feet back on the ground and say, listen, this is an unbelievable opportunity. It's going to be an unbelievable growth opportunity for you as well. So, just jump in. Don't worry about it. I've got it here at home. I've got the kids, no problem. And it ended up being a life-changing experience for me. So that experience there is what propelled me even deeper into leadership and coaching and high performance leadership. And from that experience was born my company, Inspire Leadership Coaching, because it pushed me, it exposed me to different people that were so motivated and so oriented towards growth and adding value. And I just dove in head first into all of that leadership stuff, which is what I say often. And I just loved it. And I seen the value, the value of being able to invest in myself. And I just became a living example of all the principles and the values that I bring to the table as a leadership coach, leadership development coach, and a high performance leadership coach. I walked the talk, and I've done it, and I'm still doing it. So I'm living proof that it does, and that it is possible to have a high demand job like, a school administrator, and to be able to be happy, to be able to have some kind of a balance most of the time, and to be able to still, within all that, make the time to grow and make the time to be able to expand, so that we can in turn, develop leaders within our staff.
Mhm. So you've been doing work with Inspire Leadership Coaching for several years now, and
Yeah.
so you're going to be going into this full time. But in
Yeah.
between, you've been working. So as I said in the bio, you've been working now as an efficacy leader at
Yep.
Conseil Scolaire Public. So it's a different role than what you were doing with the Ontario School Board.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little different. Not as much oriented towards the leadership development, but more like a director of pedagogy, at the school board
Okay.
level. So,
Okay.
I'm the yeah, it's like a system principal, right? So, my responsibilities are everything that's curriculum, everything that's language, everything that's, math and all the curriculum subjects. And, what I was able to bring to the table into that systemic position was actually the leadership development piece, right? So,
Okay.
doing some mastermind groups with the school principals, leadership development modules for teachers that were curious about leadership and might want to one day might one day want to have a leadership position. So I was able to bring that that little flavor to the school board, and one of the reasons why they had hired me for the job was, in fact, to bring that leadership development piece and to make things move at that end. So yeah, so basically it's like being the principal of a school, but instead of having a school full of kids, my school is like the whole school board, right? And my team are composed of different teachers, different instructional leaders that go into classrooms in the different schools in the school board across our territory. And we just, we work within those parameters based on, what our core objectives are, our theories of actions at the school board level, and we just roll it out, and we roll out the coaching, the accompaniment of the staff in terms of pedagogy, in terms of leadership development, in terms of growth, in terms of growth mindset. So all those elements that we can bring to the staff and to the school, we bring them so that it can make their jobs, to make sure that they have all the tools necessary and that they've sharpened their tools to be able to use in the classroom. So it's a great position to have. I've been doing it for 3 years now. And yes, Inspire Leadership Coaching, I've been, running the business for about 5 years now, 5-6 years. So I do that. It's been on the side, like weekends. And
Sure.
if I had some contracts here and there, I would use up all my holidays to do that. So, and that's like a passion for me, right? So now I'm just so privileged to be able to, take a step back from the system officially after 28 years and be able to say, hey, you know what? Impart the leadership coaching, the podcasts, and to just be able to, grow my reach in terms of influence and in terms of accompanying people in their leadership journey.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great time, like you said, to help grow leaders, use these skills that you've gained from these different positions and launching this business full time, like you said. So talk to me a little bit about the podcasts as well. So you have 2 different podcasts.
Yeah.
So how are they different? Is one an interview type podcast and one is you talking, or?
Yeah, it's it varies. I like to mix up the styles a little bit. So I've got Inspire Leadership on this side, Inspire Leadership Podcast. So that's actually the original podcast, which is the French language one, the Inspire Leadership Podcast. So that one's been ongoing now for about 5 years, and it's been a mix. There's some episodes where in some seasons that I've done solos, but most of them are with guests.
Okay.
So, and the guests can range from, guests from the US. I've had outside of the province of Ontario and inside the province of Ontario. So just the season that I just finished, which was season 4 of the French language podcast, Inspire Leadership Podcast, I concentrated on the principals and vice principals of our 12 Francophone school boards here in Ontario. So
Okay.
I went and got, all my guests were amongst those school boards. So, and that's ongoing. So like I said, I like to change up the format, in each season and try to bring a little bit of new, but basically, Dana, it's going out, it's getting the stories, their leadership point of view, how they view leadership, how they live leadership. What does it smell like? What does it taste like? Because, the people that are listening, I always tell my guests, there's something that you're going to say that somebody needs to hear. So that's why we record, that's why we share, and that's why we put it out there, right? Because somebody at one point needs to hear what you're going to say. So that's the French one. Now the English one, which I called This is Leadership Podcast. So that was just born, about a year and a half ago. So I've got 1 season into that podcast, and that was a direct result of a coach. I had a coach that I had hired and encouraged me. She said, you know what, maybe the time is for you, to branch and start meeting some of those, great English speaking leaders. And I said, why not? I think it's a great idea. So I launched the podcast, and I had my first season with guests that range from, George Couros to a whole bunch of different,
So how many smalls?
from the educational world that you would never think would accept to come on your podcast, but just by reaching out. Brian Aspinall was another one of our guests. So it's just been a really great ride, and having being able to do it, in both languages is a plus for me, right? Because I'm fully bilingual. But it's been great to be able to reach out, because the reach in the English speaking educational world, especially, it goes a little bit further, right? So I can have guests from the States. I've had guests from outside of the country as well. So that's been a great learning experience. And, the plan is to continue to invest. So there's a second season coming out of This is Leadership. I think I've got the format down to how I'd like to do it. It's going to be really interesting. And like I said, I just finished the season 4 of the French language one, Inspire Leadership Podcast. So there'll be a new season coming out. And that one there, usually I'll time it with the school calendar, right? So I like to do the recordings during the summer, batch record it, and then roll out some of the episodes between, October and May, so that people can listen to that when they go to the gym, when they're riding in their car and what have you. And then that's the nice thing about podcasts, right? It's like professional development on measure. You can listen to it when you have time, and you can stop it. You can continue it the next day when you're on the treadmill. So it's a great way to learn, through podcasts. And there's some great podcasts out there. And I'm just happy to be able to contribute, and provides me a different format and a different way to be able to add value to others.
Yeah, and for me, it's great finding out about these podcasts and knowing that there are podcasts in both languages, right? Because
Yeah.
for any leaders who might want to listen to podcast in French and hear from leaders in Ontario about what they're dealing with there, that's a good choice. So we've talked a lot about your basic journey from when you started in education up until now launching your business, or not launching, but continuing your business full time, and what you've learned along the way. Out of everything we've talked about, what's one thing you'd like listeners to remember?
Well, I'd say, I'd say probably the biggest lesson that I've learned is, to invest in yourself. And the biggest hurdle that I encounter when coaching and when accompanying and working with other leaders, be it in education or not, because I do some work outside of education as well. It seems to always be the same thing. It's time, right? The way we see time, the way we perceive time, the way sometimes we let time control us and not the other way around. So, a lot of people don't make the time for their growth and their professional development. And that was the biggest lesson for me, is when I discovered the importance of doing that. And then when I discovered the tools and the processes to be able to do that, and then putting them into place and actually seeing that, wow, you know what? Most of the time it works. And I'm actually doing some reading and some blog writing and some podcast recording. And what it did is that it just made me thirstier and thirstier and thirstier for it. So, talk about taking expansion, doing professional development and personal growth is the way to do it. And like I said before, Dana, I'm living proof that it is possible to do it. I've been a school principal, like you said, since 2006. And I'd say that I've been actively developing myself, once I discovered it, since probably somewhere around 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. And it's worked throughout the years. And, sure, sometimes, you fall off the horse, like we say, and some systems and processes sometimes doesn't work out. But the important thing is that you get back up, you dust off, and you get back on those processes and those systems and those habits that you've got into place, because they do work. Some seasons it'll change, it'll fluctuate, but the important thing is to be consistent, right? So, and that's what it's done for me. And that's the big lesson that I've learned, is that even though sometimes the storms can roll in and can knock me off of that process or that schedule or whatever tool that I'm using to be able to manage my time and make that time for myself to grow. But with time I've developed, the knowledge, and I know that I'll be able to get back on it because I've developed those tools to be able to do that. And that is the biggest lesson
Yeah, and I
throughout
think
the years. Is I wish I would have started way earlier. That's for sure. I wish I would have discovered it much earlier. But you know what? It's never too late. And if you're somebody, if your listeners, there's somebody out there that's saying, you know what, I don't got time for that. I'm too busy. I'm in a school. I'm a VP. I'm a teacher. I'm a salesperson. Whatever it is, once you really take a good look at how you're using your time, and you start using the tools to be able to plan your calendar, your reminders, and you set dates and you set schedules in your calendar, a person would be very pleasantly surprised how many minutes that we actually waste during the day, and how many that, if we're actually intentional and we put into our calendar, for example, tomorrow from 2 to 2:15, I'm going to read, and I'll do that 3 times a week. Doesn't take you very long before you finish your book. And that's how you're able to do your professional development and your growth. So, that's an important lesson. And for the people that are listening to us today, start now, start learning, go read some books in terms of time management, time blocking. Get yourself some leadership books from John Maxwell. There's so many good ones. And I've got some of it. And I think it's just a question of making the time and being intentional to make that time.
Yeah. Well, such good points you've made about the time, and people can do with time what they need to do if they decide to do that. Where can people connect with you and find you online if they'd like to talk more about this?
Yeah. So you know what, if you have any questions or you want to meet with me, it would be an absolute honor to do so. Probably the easiest way to find me is on my website. So if you just head on down to inspireleadership.ca, you'll find everything there. I'm on Facebook as well, on X, Instagram. But if you want to find all those accounts, just head down to inspireleadership.ca and you'll see all my contacts there, my email. Send me an email, send me a message, give me a phone call on my cell. It would be a real pleasure to be able to talk to anybody that would like to talk leadership and leadership development.
It was really great connecting with you and finding out more about what you do, and hope this will lead people to connect with you as well, both in Canada and outside. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much for being my guest today.
Great. Thank you very much, Anna. Appreciate it.